Welcome to Upload Live. So glad you could be here tonight. We are pulling on the full court press. We brought on Ken Moore to help us get through some of this stuff. Julio Jones, right? Julio Jones comes to the Tennessee Titans, and the pressure level is going through the roof right now. The question is, who has more pressure? We have 4 different matchups. Cannot wait to get into this. Hear your feedback, see what you guys think. At the end of the day, does it all matter? Hopefully not. But I think it is kind of exciting to go through some of this stuff because, like I said, the offense, the defense, the coordinators, the players, the receivers, the line, the defense, all sorts of things are going to contribute to hopefully a Tennessee Titans Super Bowl run that we all want. The window is now. John Robinson, by trading for Julio Jones, has pushed those chips to the center. So now we have to dive in and see, okay, with that type of effect, what kind of expectations now are, it's not going to be like the same, showing up to work now. With Julio Jones showing up, it was awesome to see him show up to some of the one OTA last week. He kind of flew into Nashville, then flew back out to Atlanta, and then came back to Nashville to go to the OTAs and work out with the offense, wide receivers. I know the younger wide receivers really did. That was a huge blessing for them to get to work with the Julio Jones. And Julio Jones was great. From all accounts, he helped out everybody. So thanks again for being here. Don't forget to tighten up that like button. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Don't forget to subscribe to Ken Moore's channel as well. We'll get to him in a minute. But I do have to get through a couple things to start off the show. First of all, shout out to Danko Hawkins, who gives I don't know what these are called, but super sticker or something like that. He says, hey, thanks. Prayed for Julio Jones to help Derrick Henry on the field. Football Titans, Xavier Howard from Miami, defensive back, is someone he's interested in. Hey, thanks so much, Hawkins, for the super sticker. I didn't want to forget about you. So there you are. I also wanted to put up a Facebook post. Some of you do comment, and I do appreciate that. We have, is it Talmadge? Alexander says, our defensive coordinator has to be the one with the most pressure. So we will dive into that with Ken Moore. Goes on to say, this defensive scheme, but feels like we need to be top 15 for him to be safe. Otherwise, he's gone. They do a Schwartz in the background, so that is an interesting one. So thanks for that. And finally, bringing up Mr. Titan has another show planned for June 24th. Man, I'd love to be there as he goes over more content from the Titans by bringing on people of Twitter. And here we go again, the second round of ladies from Twitter. It was a great show. It was awesome. A lot of great content, a lot of great stories, a lot of great history there. You can definitely tell the excitement, just being a fan. And you know what I mean? It was a really, really well put together show by Mr. Titan, but the ladies on Twitter even made it better. So can't wait for the second chapter, or whatever he calls it, June 24th. Man, Mr. Titan, be nice to be there, man. It'd be nice to be there and hang out with you, but shout out to you as well, Mr. Titan. So, Julio Jones effect. Let's bring in Ken Moore. There he is. Ken, first of all, thanks for joining the show. You can follow Ken Moore at K Moore Sports on Twitter. The K is capitalized, by the way, and K Moore Sports, KM and the S. Also, you can follow him on YouTube. If you go to my YouTube page, he's on there now, which is exciting. You just click subscribe, and there you go. Hit that bell for notifications, and you won't miss anything Ken puts out. Ken was right on Clowney. Ken had a really good feeling on Julio Jones. It actually worked out, and it came true. So, Ken, it's an honor to have you back on the show, man. What's going on?
Hey, Titan Upload. It's always an honor and a treat to be on your show. Thanks for welcoming me back. Shout out to all the guys and girls in the chat. Always great to interact with you guys as well. So let's get it going.
Let's get it going. So first of all, man, this is going to be a fun show. I call it the full court press. And I understand it's a basketball term, but it's also opening up a can of worms as far as pressure goes. And you guys know when you put that pressure on top of already your expectations, this thing could get quite fun. So we're going to dive in. So this is how it's going to work. I'm going to put up, we're going to get right into it. So thank you so much for your comments. Josh already giving you some love. Ken Moore says K Moore is awesome. So hopefully you guys get over there and help out K Moore. Titans Rossi in the house as well. Thank you so much for joining us, Titans Rossi. And we have the Go Vols in the house, Sin City Titan. We appreciate you, sir, for all that you do. Corey Davis, any tight end news? Actually, there is some news on the tight end front. That apparently there's been rumors that the Titans have inquired for Zach Ertz. You've told us Clowney. You pretty much had that feeling with Julio Jones. Is there anything you can share on the show today, Ken, about Zach Ertz from Philadelphia?
Unfortunately, guys, I hate to disappoint, but no intel on Zach Ertz at all. Nothing that I've heard that I'd be comfortable saying, yeah, it's going to happen, or no, it's not going to happen. It's kind of I think that may be like a Clowney type deal where it goes into training camp before he finds a team, or before the Eagles find a team that they're willing to take the best offer for. So no intel on Zach Ertz, but I will have my ear to the street over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, you'll definitely have to keep us up to date, because I feel we're still a tight end short. I think we need a tight end. Where that tight end comes, it could be a veteran that gets released. Who knows? I know we have around anywhere between, I don't know, $5, $6, $7 million in cap space. I still think they can clear more if they really wanted to. Don't know if they do. We still have a kicker situation at some point we're going to have to discuss, but we'll save that for another day. So, again, we will put up different candidates, and we're going to ask Ken. I'll share my comments as well. I want you to share your comments as well. Two-Tone Zone, I see you guys. Tighten up. Good show with Titans and Truth yesterday. Man, I got to go back there and watch that for sure, but I did hear Titans Rossi kept me up to date on all the latest information you guys were basically dishing out there. So awesome to always have Truth on, but also for you guys linking up, that was really exciting. So can't wait to go watch that. Definitely head over to Two-Tone Zone and get yourself an opportunity to watch Titans and Truth with them. It should be a great show. But yeah, so we're going to put up two candidates, have them go back and forth. Ken will say which person is more in pressure, and we can go different ways with this, Ken. It doesn't have to be just simply one way or another. I mean, you could state your case. It could be team related. It could be player related. It could just be in general. There's no rules with this game. You just pick whoever you think has more pressure and you give your reasoning why. And then, like I said, you guys in the comments, we'll get to yours. I'll let Ken go first. We'll get to your comments. Then I'll kind of share mine and we'll move on. Thanks again for being here. Versus the Indianapolis Colts. No disrespect to the Jaguars. No disrespect to the Houston Texans. I don't even know what they're doing. They're going to do some ground and pound this year. Good luck to that. But when you look at the Tennessee Titans, Ken, and you look at the Indianapolis Colts, the Colts came in, they put all their eggs in Wentz. The Titans, they still have their eggs in Derrick Henry. They still, have A.J. Brown. Now they got Julio Jones. The defense, they're going with some younger guys other than Jenkins. So you tell me, Ken, who's under more pressure to perform, the Tennessee Titans for what they did or the Indianapolis Colts? I give it to you.
Well, us in Titans Nation would think that the Titans are under the most pressure since they won the division last year. We signed Bud Dupree. We signed Julio Jones. We elevate a couple of assistant coaches to coordinator positions. So one would think that it would be the Tennessee Titans. But I would say the most pressure is on the Indianapolis Colts because they have so-called the best GM in the NFL in Chris Ballard. Well, Chris Ballard's record over his 4 years is 32-32. He's only won one playoff game as general manager. This will be his fourth starting quarterback. Andrew Luck, Jacoby Brissett, Phillip Rivers, and now Carson Wentz. So all of the national media will tell you that the Indianapolis Colts are favored in the AFC South. that they are the team to beat, that they are the team with the most talent. So since they have the most talent, they brought in another quarterback that they've traded a second round pick that could turn into a first round pick, depending on how many games he plays. I would say that the Indianapolis Colts are under the most pressure in this division just because of all the national love from the national media, and their brilliant GM is only 32-32 in his career.
Wow. Ken bringing the facts right away. I completely, how you started it was exactly how I was going to start it as well. I mean, because on the surface, the Titans, the Super Bowl window, you go out and get Julio Jones, you trade a second round pick. You've already done so much with the Caleb Farley pick in your first round with the whole back injury. You decided to go with him, which I'm very thankful for, by the way, because I think it's going to work out. And the Titans don't have, once Derrick Henry's gone, it's going to be I think it's going to be, unless they luck into another amazing running back to fit their style, their scheme, I think it could be very difficult for the Titans to get back here really quickly. I trust John Robinson. So when you start the show, and that's kind of where you're going, and then you kind of threw the wrench in there by going to the Colts. And you guys can definitely leave your comments here. I've seen Rossi says he thinks the Colts, I want to say. Christopher says Colts because they're overrated. Newsflash, Andrew Luck isn't walking through that door. Indiana Sports Talk, thank you so much for being here, says Colts as well. Josh says Colts with Wentz. Like I said, there's a lot of Colts coming in here with more pressure. Here's why I think it's the Colts as well. This is why I agree with you, Ken. Because they've went all in on Carson Wentz. And Carson Wentz, if the Titans fail, Ken, they're going to, especially if it's the defense, they're going to get one more crack at it next year. They'll have Julio Jones back. They'll have A.J. Brown. They'll have Derrick Henry. They'll have Ryan Tannehill. The line will be back. Ray Dunce will be better. All those kind of things. The Titans offensively next year will be back. They will get one more crack at it to fix that defense and get a Super Bowl, okay? Mm-hmm. Whereas the Colts, they've already kind of threw all their eggs in Wentz's basket. If Wentz, like you said, doesn't work out, I mean, it's now this is the thing too. If it doesn't work out over the next year or two with Wentz, it's not going to work out for the next 4 years. I would say Jacksonville by year 3. Okay, if this is year 1, by year 3, Jacksonville is going to be, I think, a force to be reckoned with as long as everything works out with Lawrence and Urban Meyer. If those two are on the same page and they continue to build that thing in Jacksonville, by year 3, I think Jacksonville will be a formidable opponent. I mean, my goodness, they're probably going to be very, very tough. The Colts, sure, we might be out of the picture in year 3, but I think Jacksonville would overtake the Colts if Wentz does not work out. So for me, I think the pressure's on the Colts because everything we've talked about, the media won't say this. We're going to say it here. The defense, I respect the heck out of them. What would you rank their defense as far as the National Football League? If you just kind of threw a Ken Moore number out there, where would you rank them in the league?
I'd probably say anywhere from 9 to 12 defensively is where they would come in. They have a pretty good defense, not a great defense, but it's a good defense. So I would put them in that 9 to 12 realm with the opportunity to get better, of course, or the opportunity to take a step back. Another factor to put in with the Colts, why they're under so much pressure, in my opinion, Carson Wentz is their Ryan Tannehill, except they invested more in Carson Wentz than we did for Tannehill. If Tannehill didn't work out for us, we fall back, we probably go 5-11, and we get a top 5, top 10 pick. For the Colts, they're investing at least a second round pick in Carson Wentz. They giving a second round pick the same way we gave a second round pick for Julio Jones. The only thing that second round pick could turn into a first round pick. So if Carson Wentz doesn't work out, this could set their franchise back 3 to 4 years because now they have to draft a quarterback, develop a quarterback, and we all know what that's been like with the Jake Lockers of the world. with the Marcus Mariotas of the world that show hints of brilliance, but then they take major steps back at the most critical points. So if Carson Wentz does not work out for the Colts could find themselves in a situation where they're struggling to win 6-7 games a year for the next 3 or 4 years. And that gives the Titans a very easy cakewalk to multiple division titles.
Yeah. I'm going to go ahead and read a couple of these comments that are going to go. We'll see if they agree more with us or they agree with maybe they go to the Titans. How hard was this for you, by the way? At least this one. Was it a pretty easy one for you to just say, yeah, it's the Colts, or was it a little bit more challenging for you to actually come up with a reasoning for the Colts?
No, I didn't really come up with a reasoning until about 5 minutes before the show. I went through a couple of different thoughts as I was driving home, and like I said, it's easy to say the Titans because you're in Titans Nation, and so it's automatic to give them the pressure, but sometimes you have to remove yourself from being a Titans fan and say, okay, let me look at this objectively and see where the team stand.
Yeah. 1 second, I got family stuff going on. What's up?
Oh, go ahead.
No. We can't. Nope. All right, moving on. So Jay says, no, it's got to be the Titans pressure because we're actually going to be going from hunters to being hunted. That is a good point. I mean, we have to defend the division title that we won last year. And remember Tannehill, I've heard this too. Tannehill has been great during the regular season. I just don't know. Is it him? I think it's kind of how the offense is built. But in the Baltimore game, I'll give you that one. The Baltimore game, they didn't have an answer for Baltimore. Tannehill didn't have an answer. He decided he wasn't going to be as mobile for whatever reason in that game. Once A.J. Brown was shut down, I mean, A.J. Brown gave us what he could, put us up 10-0. Derrick Henry couldn't get going. Corey Davis was non-existent. I didn't hear much from Ferkser or any of those guys, Jonnu Smith. So, again, at the end of the day, make a good point. But I still think the Colts, and I agree with Ken, I still think the Colts are under more pressure. Let's see. Preston says we have a lot of expectations to fill with these players that we have with our offense. Steven says, I say Indianapolis, the Indianapolis Colts offense, Tennessee Titans defense. So he's kind of taking both sides there, which is totally fine. See Big O Titans in the house. Shout out to you, Big O Titan. Louis says, with Julio on the field, Ferkser is going to have a great year, or is going to have a great year. I know Will Compton has come out and said that many, many times on Twitter as well. And Mitchell's worried about the offensive coordinator, which we'll get to him later. So, again, Ken and I both agree with this. We are going to take the Colts having more pressure. And from glancing around what's on the feed, I would think you guys would also agree. Most of you are saying the Colts. All right, so let's get into our second topic. So we have the Colts, more pressure over the Titans. So our next topic is going to be one of the fun ones, the Tennessee Titans offense or the Tennessee Titans defense. Which one is under the most pressure? We'll start it with Ken again. Ken, what do you think? Titans offense or Titans defense?
Well, one would think the Titans defense ranked 30th, 31st, the worst third down defense in God knows how long in the NFL. Made a lot of changes in the secondary, brought in some young guys. You got Christian Fulton coming back as a second-year guy in that secondary. You bring in Bud Dupree. You bring in Autry. One would think it would be the Titans defense. For me, to whom much is given, much is expected. And much has been given to this Tennessee Titans offense. So to me, the most pressure is on this offense to continue to be a top 5, top 3, maybe even number 1 offense in the NFL. Because this is going to have to be the unit that carries this team, not only during the regular season, but this unit is going to have to step up in the playoffs. because more than likely you're going to have to go on the road unless miraculously we go 15-2 or 14-3 and get home field. More than likely you're going to have to end up going through Kansas City. And to beat Kansas City, you're going to have to score points. Unless their offensive line breaks down again like it did in the playoffs and the Super Bowl, you're going to have to score points to beat that team or to beat Buffalo. You're going to have to score points. So to me, all the pressure falls on the offense because they've been given the most. It's like if you give one child, your oldest child, the keys to the car, you expect that child to be more responsible, to set the example for the kids, his little brothers and little sisters. So same type of scenario. You don't expect the defense to carry this team. So for me, the most pressure is on the offense.
The chat is actually disagreeing with you. They say it's the no-brainer. I mean, I've heard words easy. We do have We Talk Football says offense. And we do have one bring back Compton. I'll tell Mr. Titan that one. He'll get a kick out of that. But let's start with Titans. Rossi says defense for sure. He even says it's easy. Walter Jennings says defense. Steven says defense. Devin says defense. Cadero says pass rush, so he's going even more into the defense. Matthew says defense. Jay says easily offense. Chris says offense. And We Talk Football says all I'm saying is, hey, our expectations for the offense. See, I'm in agreement with you again. I don't know if I found your notes and then just copied your notes, but I am agreeing with you. I think it's the offense, and here's why I think it is. The defense finished 25th last year, okay? I mean, honestly, I think the defense, even if they go out there and play and don't do anything that much differently, Ken, I still think they're going to improve. They're going to be better than they were last year. Last year, it was a nightmare. They got no pass rush. They had no pass rushers at one point with Beasley on the field. Clowney gave it his all, but he eventually got hurt. We already get into Landry, how he plays way too much. Evans was terrible last year. Byard took a step back, even though he will tell you he had the most tackles. But you don't want your safety to have the most tackles. I mean, I don't think you would rather have probably one of your linebackers or defensive guys up front giving you your most tackles. But beyond the point, the defense, all they have to do is hold their ground. They played pretty decently in the playoff game. But if the offense takes a step back, I mean, now with Julio Jones, I don't know what they averaged last year. I'm assuming they averaged 30 points per game. They were a top 5 offense for most of the year. At one point, I think against Green Bay, they were like number 1. If they aren't on track and they have a hiccup, they're the ones I feel that are going to feel the most pressure because they saw what happened last year, Ken. I mean, let's not go too much further than the Houston Texans games, right? I know Watson's a good quarterback, right? And I know they had J.J. Watt or whatever. But here's the thing. Derrick Henry went over 200 yards in both of those games. I'm assuming he was close to 500 yards combined in both those games. And they needed what? Overtime in one where the Texans didn't even touch the ball. And then the last second field goal by Julio Jones. Wait, that wasn't Julio Jones, but it was his number 2. And I believe it doinked in. So the offense has to perform. You see what happens when they don't against Baltimore. So that's why I go with the offense. They know it. And I think most fans know it, although you guys are telling me Kent Woods is saying defense as well. But again, the defense is, if they're bad again, nobody's going to blame the defense. Everyone's going to blame the offense because they're not scoring enough points. Unless the defense is just 32nd in the league, giving up 40 points a game, I don't think they're going to blame the defense.
Here's why it's more pressure, in my opinion, on the offense. And as you mentioned, go no further than the playoff game against Baltimore. The defense played their best game of the year. They only gave up 20 points. If we would have went into that game and said Baltimore's only scoring 20 points, everybody would have said the Titans are going to win. We're averaging 30 points a game. We ran over Baltimore earlier in the season in Baltimore. So that's the reason why I say it's on the offense, because even if the defense improves, if the defense gets to, 15th ranked, 14th ranked, somewhere around middle of the pack, it's still going to take the offense to put points on the board. It's going to be the offense's responsibility to control the clock. So many games last year, the Titans were behind in time of possession. A lot of times, teams kept the ball 32, 33, 35 minutes a game, and the Titans only had the football for about 25, 26 minutes a game. Time of possession is a great equalizer for your defense, because if your defense is on the field, they're not giving up points and yardage. So that's why it's even more important for this offense to be on point.
It's a good point. That is a very good point. Again, most of these guys, I mean, I would say most of them are saying defense, but there are a few of them that are saying offense. Narv Dude says, say, thanks, Upload, for hosting Tighten Up. No, thank you for being here, man. And thanks for the super chat, of course. But it's you guys that make this thing go, and it's super enjoyable when you guys are in here giving your feedback, but you're also giving your points of view. And again, I'm not one, Ken's not like that either, where we think our opinions overrule anybody else's opinions. Trust me, we can agree to disagree on this stuff. And who knows? At the end of the day, nobody knows what's going to happen this year. Hopefully it goes very, very well, but one injury or two and boom, all things could change. So we'll see what happens. Tomorrow, Byard has a lot of tackles due. The coach is moving him around majority of snaps at strong safety. The reason people say he had a down year is for his lacking of INTs. That's a good one from DeMario. It's a good point. I feel like he had a down year. I'm not going to say he didn't. DeMario, you said you thought he didn't. But here's the thing with Byard, and I think, DeMario, we would probably both agree on this one. Byard had to do way more than he usually does. Like Byard, because of all the different breakdowns between pass rush, you had a hole at linebacker there with Evans, and they tried putting Evans out to cover. We had injuries galore. Dory Jackson never really got out on the field. We had all sorts of issues with Joseph in the beginning of the year, and Byard really had to cover for these guys. So to be fair to Byard, I mean, if things went as well, how they should have went, Byard probably would have had a better year. Do you agree with that, Ken, or do you got a different point of take?
No, I think you're right on that. I think Kevin Byard had a lot to do in the secondary. There were a lot of injuries in the secondary last year, and he did not handle it well. He did not perform up to his usual standard. He was not horrible, but he did not have the interceptions. And interceptions, sometimes the football just finds you, right? It's just like if you're a bad infielder and you have the yips, the ball will find you, right? If you're a bad outfielder in baseball, the ball will find you. And last year, the ball just did not find Kevin Byard. So I don't think he had a terrible year, as most people think he did, but of course he did not have an all-pro year like we're accustomed to.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's going to bounce. I think he's going to have a really good. I'm excited to see what he's going to do with Hooker. I think Hooker's going to have a lot of pressure on him this year, because if he doesn't work out, I know we drafted some guys that maybe can, fit that place. I know we brought the guy from the Jets, who I haven't heard great things on, but he's obviously some sort of depth piece they feel comfortable with. But I do think Hooker's been put in some pretty tough spots over the last couple years. I think he'll be ready to go. At least we hope so. Alex, super chat, does Downing concern you? We will get to that, I promise you. Thanks again for the super chat. It did make the list of what we're going to dive into, and I think it's actually next. It's the next topic. So I guess you're just getting a little jump start on us there, but we will definitely get there. I did have a question. Al Pierce, shout out to Al. Al does a great job of bringing Al never misses a show, and if he does miss one, he's always the first one to comment. So shout out to you, Al, because like I said, you put Titans Nation right up there, and you're listened to some of your work, and you're an amazing guy, but you're an amazing pastor too. So shout out to you and your church and all that kind of stuff. Let's see. Here we go. Upload. So do you feel like getting rid of Corey Davis is worth it now? Me and you both were on the record on keeping Corey, and you would actually said you would have brought him back for a pretty high number. I forget what the number was, but I want to say it was over $15 million. How do you feel about that question?
Corey, man, you know how we feel about Corey. I definitely wish Corey was still a part of this roster. I heard, I'm going to get to an interesting prop bet I heard on the radio this afternoon. I'll bring that up in just a moment. But the question becomes, would you rather have Corey Davis, your second round pick, and your fourth round pick, or would you rather have Julio Jones? Because that's essentially what worked out. You lost Corey, you lost the second round pick, you lost the fourth round pick, you bring in Julio Jones. I'm ecstatic to have Julio Jones. If you're going to lose a Corey Davis, you bring in a Julio Jones. It's tough, man. It's tough. But if you're losing Corey, you're bringing in Julio. I can't say that I'm disappointed. Interesting prop bet I heard on the radio this afternoon. Interested what you guys think here in the chat. Who will have the most receiving yards this year? Corey Davis or Julio Jones? Corey Davis may be the number one option in New York. They did draft the receiver in the first round. I think who has some injury history, from what I understand. But you have A.J. Brown as the number one here. You have Julio Jones as the number two. Do teams double team Julio? Do they double team AJ? So an interesting prop bet. What do you guys think? Who do you think will have the most yards receiving this year? Julio Jones or Corey Davis? Very interesting.
That is a really good question. I actually think, man, it doesn't help Corey that he's hurt already. I hope he can stay healthy. The quarterback situation could be a little bit of a concern there, how long that takes. But Julio Jones, they're very comparable when you talk about touchdowns. I think Julio Jones averaged, 6 touchdowns a year in his 10-year career. Corey Davis, he can't even be. How many do you think he averaged? Between 4?
I think 5. I think 4.5 to 5.
Okay. So, they're more comparable there. But I think Julio Jones, man, with A.J. Brown, though, it just kind of depends. And I think that's why the media slams the Titans so much about Julio getting his yards, getting his, place on this team. But that's a really good question, because Corey, like you said, is number one. I'd probably say Corey Davis would get more yards, but what do I know? Let's see. Matthew says Corey might hit 1,000 maybe. He should have hit 1,000 if he would have caught the ball against the Texans. I think he had like 3 drops there. Julio moved the sticks, though. We got a Drew Bennett. Two-tone zone. God bless you, sir. And then Corey plays for the Jets, so Julio will take that according to Al. So maybe Al makes it. DeMario says Davis could possibly have more. Titans have a running back. Jets have Wilson and not much of a running game there. So that's an interesting point as well. All right, so we're moving on. We got Titans, Colts. Who had more pressure? We both agreed it was the Colts. Then we moved on. Offense, defense. We both agreed it was the offense. Most of you in the chat said it was the defense. So now let's move on to the third topic. So we'll move it over here. And like we said from the super chat, we move into downing the offensive coordinator, which will make his appearance first year versus Shane Bowen, who theoretically it's his second year. Vrabel protected him for the most part. We don't really know who was running the defense at certain times or whatever, but Bowen did get named the defensive coordinator. So Ken, who's got more pressure?
I'm gonna stick with my theme, man. I think it's Todd Downing. He's already failed, if you will, as an offensive coordinator with the Raiders back in 2017. He may have been part of the reason that Jack Del Rio lost his job that year because their offense regressed so poorly. And again, he's been given so many tools at his disposal, but then also you have to consider who he's replacing. Shane Bowen is replacing himself, right? I mean, he just has a different title, but he's replacing Shane Bowen. We don't know what his title was. Now he's Shane Bowen, defensive coordinator. So he's just replacing himself. Todd Downing is replacing arguably the best offensive coordinator in the NFL the past 2 seasons in Arthur Smith. Arthur Smith obviously goes on to take the head coaching position at Atlanta. So now he has those shoes to fill. So does he continue to use Arthur Smith's playbook, or does he start to tear out some pages and start inserting his own index cards into that playbook to try to develop his own self, to try to give himself a name, to try to put himself into a head coaching position somewhere down the road? All these things you have to think about with individuals. We don't know if he's all in to make the Titans the best that they can be, regardless if he gets the credit or not, or is he an offensive coordinator that's going to be a glory seeker? On 3rd and 2, he's going to try to throw a 40-yard fade down the field to Julio Jones instead of turning the ball around and giving it to Derrick Henry. Is he going to start doing all kind of crazy reverses and trick plays? We don't know what we're getting with this guy. So, in my opinion, he has the most pressure on him because he has the most tools at his disposal and who he's replacing as well.
SSJ Titan X says, I heard Todd was responsible for calling red zone plays and 3rd down calls last year. I want to give a shout out to my buddy on Twitter, Donovan, who shared this information earlier with me. It came from Mike Miracles on Twitter, who kind of broke that down as well. Thank you, John Doe, for subscribing, by the way. So shout out again to Donovan and SSJ Titan for bringing this to our attention. Does that change your mind at all? I mean, on giving you more confidence really quick with with Todd Downing, if he was the guy calling the red zone?
That's surprise. That would be extremely surprising to me if your assistant coach is calling plays in the red zone. That's the most critical part of the field. So why would Arthur Smith turn that responsibility over to him in the red zone? That it may be true, but it just doesn't make sense to me. So I would love to know the source of that information.
I don't know if 3rd down was such a. I'm trying to think of our 3rd down percentage. If any of you guys know in the chat, definitely leave it with us where we ranked in 3rd downs. I feel like our 3rd downs weren't the greatest. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I feel like on 3rd and 2, they bring Derrick Henry out, McNichols trots out on the field, and then they throw some sort of pass. And sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. But I kept saying, like, why? And there were other times on certain 3rd downs where A.J. Brown and Corey Davis, both of them at the same time, were on the bench. How does that happen? At least one of them needs. I mean, you can't do that with Julio and A.J. next year. You got to have one of those guys on the field almost every single down.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, may have been the time when we threw the pass to the left tackle on the 40-yard line on 3rd down.
Oh, my goodness. That was awful. That changed the game right there. That one play.
Yep.
Just the air, the balloon popped.
Yep.
Let's see. So yeah, thanks again for being here. I'll throw Ken right up here one more time. Go follow him at K More Sports on Twitter or K More Sports on YouTube. Definitely go follow him on YouTube. Subscribe and hit that bell for notifications. Ken has great stuff. His show is called The Day After. And usually after a Titans performance, win or lose, Ken comes down to break it down. And Ken, you do some stuff on the side too. And I just want to make sure, like, the hardcore people here on Titan Upload know you, but people just kind of tuning in, they may find you on TV once in a while. Ken, do you kind of want to share what you do on the side?
Yeah, absolutely. I do some college football games for ESPN3, mostly the Southwestern Athletic Conference or the Southland Conference, with Sam Houston State, who won the division, the FCS championship this year. So I had the opportunity to call several of their games over the past couple of years. Also cover a lot of games for Grambling and Prairie View, Jackson State. Of course, Deion Sanders is the head coach at Jackson State. So we get a chance to cover a lot of those ball games. So if you guys are flipping around the dial this fall, hook up ESPN3 and you may see your boy on some college football broadcasts.
That's awesome, man. Shout out again to you, Ken.
I appreciate it, bro.
Life of Devontae, you always get a shout out, man. And Life of Devontae invited me on his podcast. So I'm actually kind of thrilled about that. I hope the time works out. But shout out to you, Life of Devontae, as always, man. Thanks for all that you do, especially on Twitter. Any breaking news or whatever. I know a lot of times you'll send me a message. Hey, did you see this? Did you see that? So I do appreciate that, sir. So again, for me, the question is Todd Downing or Shane Bowen. Now, here's another one I think, which I agree with you. I feel like on the surface, we should all say Bowen. Because unlike Downing, how there's nobody that's really over his or really trailing him at any means. I mean, this is his year. I don't think anybody can save him, and that's kind of going to be my argument on why I think he's going to ultimately have the most pressure. Bowen, this is the thing with Bowen. Bowen can get replaced, Ken, and the Titans could still, Schwartz could come in, and the Titans would improve probably, and the Titans could still go on to win the Super Bowl. If Downing fails and is a nightmare, and I know some people, I get it. There are some people out there that will defend him and say how the thing in Oakland wasn't his fault. And again, they defend him up and down, and that's fine. Okay, I wasn't in Oakland. I don't know the story. I just hear what I read from Raider fans. But I can tell you, whether I agree or disagree with you, whatever, people in Oakland, they hate this guy. They literally hate him. They don't like him at all. So again, they are diehard Oakland Raider fans, which are now Vegas. We know, but when Downing was there, he was actually at Oakland. And then the other interesting thing was this thing kind of split management. I mean, you had a head coach. Del Rio, I don't think really wanted him as far as the offensive coordinator. You had the owner who did, and then it just became a huge rift, and they kind of promoted him. And I know injuries and stuff happens, and there was a lot of drops. But, man, Zach Mettenberger was 0-10 as a quarterback. I thought he was pretty good. He didn't have any offensive line. He didn't have any wide receivers. But you're not going to listen to me when I make that argument that Zach Mettenberger was good because he's 0-10. So, again, sometimes I feel like there are a lot of excuses we all can go to. But at the end of the day, you got to produce. You got to find a way to produce. Just like the defense. No excuses. They needed to produce. So I'm going to go with Downing. And the reason why I go with Downing one more time is because if he fails, the Titans, let's be honest, defense, I just don't see them carrying this team like a few years ago. It's got to be the offense. That's why we feel like the offense is under more pressure. But I don't see anybody, maybe the wide receiver coach, more, right? Any relation, by the way?
No, don't know the guy.
Okay. I think it's Rob. Is it
I'm sure
Rob
he's a
Moore?
great guy, though. He has an excellent last name, so I'm sure he's a great guy.
Is it Rob Moore? I can't remember who. Yeah, if you guys know in the chat, let me know. And then Keith Carter, offensive line coach. I mean, okay. And then you got the guy that is a movie guy that does stuff on the side to train guys in movies. Pat O'Hara or something. What I think that's his name.
Is that the guy that's responsible for signing the wrestler?
I don't know. How do you feel about that one?
Man, sometimes I think we act like a 2-14 team when we do stuff like that. My fear of that guy is that he's over aggressive in training camp and hurts one of our defensive linemen. That's my biggest fear when you bring in guys like that. But according to some, he was a really good football player before he went into wrestling, blah, blah, blah. So we'll see what happens. I just hope he doesn't hurt any of his own teammates.
For the media was kind of hyping him up. I saw him the first day at camp that he was actually present. And for me, he looked like what I would have looked like if you would have said, hey, you got signed today by the Titans your first day. I can't imagine what that's like for him. I know he had a lot of success with wrestling at Michigan and stuff like that, but I mean, it's totally different. So apparently the first couple days or whatever, how many times he was there last week, they were just starting from ground zero working with the guy. So it worked for New England. We'll see if it works for us, but I agree with you. I'm not like super pumped about that move. But if it works out, great. We'll see what happens. All right, it was Rob Moore. So thank you, Josh, for sharing that one. We do appreciate that. So I'm gonna go Downing. again, like I said, there's just nobody that I think's going to be, there's no spotter. It's like me and you lifting weights, dude. It's like, okay, you throw up a bunch of weight. If I don't have a spotter, I'm in trouble, right? And then you got like Vrabel behind you spotting you. Who's under more pressure? If I fail, I'm done. You fail, Vrabel just helps you out, right? And that's it. Yep. We call it a day. And then Vrabel can go and bench press, whatever. So I don't think that this is very debatable at all. Now, if you go person-wise, like just dive into these guys psychologically and you break them down, I'm sure Bowen's under a lot of pressure. But Downey's going to be under pressure, not to be replaced. He's going to let the whole team down. So I think at least Bowen, he can kind of, it doesn't work out, whatever. He might even stay on the staff, Ken. I think Vrabel really, really likes him. I don't think they'll fire him. Just Schwartz will take more of the show, and Bowen's going to have to kind of take a step back. So that's why I'm going with Todd Downey. Only loyalty matters is I just subbed. I didn't know Ken had a YouTube. He does. He's got some great content on there. And again, the day after, definitely check it. What do you got? You got anything planned over I know this is kind of like the downtime. There's really not a whole lot going on. Do you got anything planned for the next month or so?
Nothing coming up in the next week or so, unless something breaks with Zach Ertz or someone else. If there's some breaking news, obviously we'll break. We'll break in with that. But for right now, we're kind of looking at the beginning of training camp before we start rolling out some new shows or whatnot. But definitely go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. But just like Julio Jones, I had a little information on that. So May 25th, I was able to put up some information. And then a week later, we were able to come on and kind of give you guys some insight as to why the Julio Jones signing was likely to happen, even though Diana Rossini was telling you that it was a long shot. So ours turned out to be true. So to get those instant messages, go ahead and hit that notification bell, and you guys will be first in line to get that information.
I still can't believe how many people keep defending her. Like, and it's not like she obviously got bad information, but I think it was you that told me you were watching ESPN and they kind of bring her out and acted like she's the one that broke the story. So
yep. They flew her in, right? They flew her in
last week
from Connecticut to Nashville just so she could be live there with the information. Why aren't they giving that information to Teron Davenport? He's the Titans beat reporter. Why is Diana getting all the love?
That's true. D-Man says, did you all see J-Rob's Instagram post? I'm assuming it was the post that the story a couple days that came out, pontoon boat. Have you been on a pontoon boat lately, Ken?
Not lately, bro. It's been a while. It's probably been, probably about 5 or 6 years. I think when I went to Costa Rica was the last time I was on a pontoon boat. So, yeah. I definitely haven't made any major trades from one for sure.
I'm shocked he had service. You know what I mean? He was pretty far out there. And then the next day they met at or at least where he made his phone calls from some diner out in rural Tennessee. It's like that place was trending. And he definitely gave them some love. But that was an amazing story. I'm glad it all did work out. And like we've talked about with the GM from the Falcons, I mean, this was his first go around. John Robinson gave him a lot of love, so to speak, that they were willing to work out a deal. And like I said, pretty cool story. Glad we get him, and hopefully it works out. So we got Robert says 180 watching. Definitely hit that like. Yeah, tighten up that like button. I'd really, really appreciate that. Again, thanks again for being here. Tighten up. We're going to run down the list one more time, and you guys definitely get involved in this as well. Again, thanks again for the super sticker, Mr. Hawkins. I did put this up to start the show. I saw you commented just a few minutes ago, so I did want to put that up there one more time. And again, definitely go check out Mr. Titan's channel on the 24th, be part 2 of the ladies from Twitter. So cannot wait for that one, sir. And like I said, keep doing your thing, Mr. Titan. You do great work. All right. So we got Ken back in here. We got one more go around. So we've had Bowen.
You had the family situation. I had a loose puppy running around chewing up a wire. So I had to get my grandson to go put her back up. So sorry about that, guys.
All right. Hopefully everything's good, man. Hopefully everything's good. So we got one more to get through. And I saved the best for last because this one is interesting. Okay. So we got Vrabel versus J-Rob. Who's going to be under the most pressure as this season unfolds? Now, I got my take. As I've thrown it out on Facebook and stuff like that, can tell you that most of the people disagreed with me and went a different direction. So again, we'll start off with you one more time. You're doing great with the leadoff role, by the way. I mean, you're batting 1,000. So who do you think is going to have the most pressure put on them this season, Vrabel or John Robinson? And I'm talking like John Robinson mostly has done his work already, but we haven't seen if that work's going to pay off yet, right? And what happened last year, just hopefully take all that stuff into account. And then Vrabel's got to coach him up anyways, but he's got to get better on that defensive end. So who you got?
Well, first and foremost, I have not seen your social media, so I don't know which way you're going on this one. As you mentioned, J-Rob has done a lot already, right? A lot of his job is already done. The draft, the free agency, the trade. However, he still has a couple of more pieces that he needs to fit into this ball club. As we talked about tight end, he needs to find a tight end to fit in. He needs to find a kicker. Is it going to be Gostkowski or who's it going to be that's going to fit in at the kicker position? With that being said, Mike Vrabel, in my opinion, is under the most pressure. Now, Vrabel, he has a little cushion. He's gotten to the playoffs the last couple of years. He got to an AFC championship game. So he has a nice soft cushion to land on if things somehow implode this season. But with the expectations being Super Bowl or bust, and considering what happened in the playoffs last year against Baltimore, where the offense completely fell apart, don't know what was going on with Arthur Smith, but with Vrabel being a defensive coach, it's not much he could do to lend a hand to Arthur Smith. So how much can he help Todd Downing? As you mentioned, Upload, he can help Shane Bowen in the defense because that's his background. So Shane Bowen kind of has a little bit of a cushion. But I think Mike Vrabel overseeing these two young, inexperienced coaches is going to have a lot of pressure on his shoulders this year to make sure this team performs to optimal performance.
Man, threw a lot at us. Before I kind of get in mine, we'll give some more of the comments from the people in the chat. Vrabel or John Robinson. There are some interesting ones. Some like, hey, neither one of them are really going to have that big of, it is what it is, but, and then they pick. But I feel like it's deeper than that, especially if it's a failure. Obviously, if it's a failure. This is your Super Bowl window this year, next year. It was your job to get it right? I mean, last year you tried to get it right. You couldn't do it. And ultimately, you ended up winning the division, which is a success. We haven't won the division since 2008. But you didn't win a playoff game. You actually lost your home playoff game in the wild card weekend. And a lot of people weren't very thrilled with that. I want to shout out JT Sports. If you're looking for a guy who's willing to I believe JT's a Steelers fan, if I'm not mistaken, but he definitely has some great takes on Lamar Jackson. He had a take today, Ken, that he breaks down. There's a lot of Titan fans, and not in this community. I don't see him in this community, but a lot of Titan fans and Colts fans, he says, that are basically taking the Jaguars for granted and says, you know what? The Jaguars with Lawrence, and obviously how they're rebuilding that down in Jacksonville, this is going to be the first year of that. Says, don't sleep on them, man. They might kind of sneak up on you. And I agree with him because look what happened last year when the Jaguars, their only win all year, beat the Colts week 1. And if it wasn't for that, the Titans wouldn't have won the division. So I completely agree with him. What do you think about the Jaguars for this upcoming season?
I think you have to respect the Jaguars because they're going to be the kind of the Pandora's box of this season. You don't know what you're going to get when you play them, especially if you have to play them early in the year until you can get some tape on them. Luckily for us, I don't think we play them. I know we don't play them the first month of the season, so we'll have time to get some tape on Urban Meyer, on Trevor Lawrence, on ETN. Is he going to be the primary back? Is he going to share a role with John Robinson in the backfield? So you don't know how that offense is going to play out early in the season, but it will give the Titans and the Colts a chance to see them play multiple games before either one of us gets a shot at them. I would not want to play them, in week 2 or week 3, not knowing, what they're going to be throwing at us. So I think the Jaguars are a wild card, not a wild card team, but just a wild card as far as they can upset you if you don't come in prepared, because we all know division opponents, division games are those hardest games. Yeah, you can expect to go in and beat the Jets because they're the Jets. You can't necessarily expect that with the Jaguars or even the Texans if they have Deshaun Watson back, because we always know that those division games are the hardest.
Yeah, they are, and you never know. I mean, we could have lost both games to the Texans. I mean, we could have. Henry went over 200 yards, still could have lost both those. Now, JT, thank you, man, for stopping by, and keep up the great work, dude. Congrats on, I believe you hit 10,000, if I'm not mistaken, on YouTube. But this guy definitely, I mean, he tries to cover all the teams, and it's not easy. It is not easy. I mean, sometimes it's hard to cover multiple teams. He tries covering all 32. So shout out again to JT. He told me last year, Ken, that the Bengals were going to beat us. Actually, he said the Bengals are going to give us fits. He said you may end up beating them, but it would be close. Bengals ended up beating us. So he knows football. So shout out again to JT. All right. Back to the question. Vrabel, John Robinson. I think a lot of you are missing the point when it comes to Vrabel. 2 years ago, Vrabel, 9-7, made the playoffs. Would you say he overachieved in that year, Ken?
Absolutely. I mean, who expected us to go to the AFC Championship game? Now, we probably wanted more than 9-7 as far as the regular season goes. But once we got those matchups, were tailor-made for us with the Patriots and with the Ravens. Definitely overachieved that first year.
In his first year, he beat Philadelphia, defending Super Bowl champs. He beat the New England Patriots, Super Bowl runner-ups. He goes to the last game. Mariota gets hurt. He trots out Big Game Gabbert. I think he beat Houston in week 2 with no left tackle or right tackle. And he ended up beating Jacksonville in week 3 with Mariota, who came in once Gabbert got knocked out, and they scored 9 points and won. My point is this. Vrabel has done a lot for this team. Again, Mike Mularkey, some of you make fun of him. Shame on you for that, because Mike Mularkey, I felt like, built this culture when you win 2 games and three games back to back. DeMarco Murray, I feel like, was huge. Delaney Walker's another guy I want to give a lot of credit. Jarrell Casey. But the players just adored and loved Mularkey. So, again, I know the Trubisky thing really kind of let him down, and he wasn't willing to get rid of him, and that might have done him in the end. But for him to win our first playoff game since, I can't even tell you, a very long time, because we didn't win a playoff game in 2008, even though we were 13-3. We lost to the divisional round against the Ravens. I still think Mularkey was huge in that. But I feel like Vrabel was brought in to do a little bit more, and he did already. I mean, he took us to the AFC Championship game. But to answer this question, when you look at John Robinson, I just feel like he is really, people have, what's the right word? People have overlooked what has happened to John. Like, I trust John. I love John Robinson. He's done great. I mean, ever since he got here, it's nice to have a GM care. They were talking about how many GMs in Titans history would have made that trade with Julio Jones, and you could probably argue not many. So John Robinson, we know he's super connected, but here's why I'm going with John Robinson. Vrabel, would you agree with me, Ken? If it blows up, he'll be back. But if it didn't work out in Tennessee this year, and let's just say like Robinson, it was either him or Vrabel, would you say that Vrabel will probably find another coaching job in the NFL at least one more time? You think that's fair to say? Somebody will give him a shot?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, Vrabel could be the next head coach of the New England Patriots if whenever Bill Belichick decides to step down. If things don't go right here in Tennessee, he could be the next head coach in New England. So, yeah, I think Vrabel would definitely get another head coaching job. He's not done anything not to deserve another head coaching job.
And if I was going to throw this out to you as well, do you think, push come to shove, if both jobs were open, and let's say he never was at Tennessee yet, which job do you think he would have picked? The New England job or the Tennessee job?
I think he would have picked New England, but there is something to replacing a legend, right?
True.
And then they also have Josh McDaniels there, who's been there forever as the offensive coordinator, and some think that he's kind of the coach in waiting there in New England. So I think it would have been tough. If now the question is, who would New England have hired? Would they have went with Josh McDaniels, who's been there, offensive coach, but failed as a head coach in Denver because he's a little too arrogant? Or do you go with someone like a Mike Vrabel, defensive minded? He's been there, played there, won Super Bowls there. So that would have been an interesting decision for New England if Bill Belichick, say, had retired at that point, and the job would have been up to those two guys. So, but I think for Mike Vrabel, if he had a choice of one or the other, I think he would have went back to where it was comfortable in New England if that opportunity had presented itself.
Marvin, we do. We should mention this too. He makes a good point about giving Amy Adams credit. Amy's been an amazing owner. I remember Tommy Smith. Oh my goodness. Tommy Smith single-handedly almost just lit the whole franchise on fire and watched it burn down. It was one of the best moves ever to get rid of him. And I wasn't sure how Amy would do, but a lot of the media was like, well, she doesn't like to be on camera. That was very difficult for her. But man, she has knocked it out of the park, whether it be what she's done for the Titans, giving them the flexibility to do what they want to do, bringing in the draft, trying to make the Titans with the uniform reveal, bringing in rock bands and all that, or country band, whatever. She's done a great, great job. Did you want to comment at all on Amy Adams before we
I do. Absolutely. I definitely want to comment on that. And I want guys that don't know to know my background. I'm from Houston. So as you can see from my wall, I am a lifelong Houston Oilers fan and Tennessee Titans fan. So Amy's father, Bud Adams, very, very hated man in Houston for taking this team, even before he left, for kind of, in some people's hands, not in my mind, but in some people's minds, trying to hold the city hostage to build a new stadium that they actually ended up doing after the Oilers left. And they ended up with the Texans and NRG Stadium, and we know how that's gone for the last 20 years. It would have been better for the city just to build Bud Adams a stadium here. But with that being said, I, before this year, have been very apprehensive about the Adams family and their ownership of the Oilers/Titans. Bud Adams did a lot here in Houston. Brought in Warren Moon from the Canadian League, the first real superstar African-American quarterback in the NFL. He gave him that opportunity. Drafted Steve McNair, drafted Vince Young. And that's one of the things that I've always loved about the Adams family. But financially speaking, to me, they've always been an ownership group that cared more about the bottom line than really getting the team to the Super Bowl. But now I'm seeing that they're willing to spend money to try to get this team over the top. Because I've always had the adage, are you comfortable just being a division champion and a playoff contender? Or do you want to spend that extra money to try and go win a Super Bowl? And that's one thing that I love about this situation with Julio Jones is that they've gone all in. No matter what happens, if Julio gets hurt in week 8 and he misses the rest of the season, you cannot blame the ownership group because they did everything that they could to put the pieces in place. Now it's up to the GM and the coach and the players to get it done.
Good. Great comments. Robert says, "Yeah, I won't hold that against you from being from Houston. Great addition for tonight. You bring great insight."
Thank you.
It's always a treat to have you on, Ken, and we do appreciate you for coming on the show. But to finish my original thought too is I do think it's John Robinson. And again, it's because last year was such a whiff. I mean, Beasley, whiff. We still don't know, Ken, if like he's still got a lot. Like how we've been through this. How many first rounders work out? I mean, he took Corey Davis, Adoree Jackson, both in the first round in the same year. How many are with the team right now? None. We've talked about Jack Conklin, right? He's going to be an all-pro. I guarantee you. He was already an all-pro, and I know injuries kind of, a little bit, but he had
one injury. Hey, one injury. Now, that's the one thing I hold against John Robinson, man. You got to resign your first-round picks. Adoree Jackson, fine, he was hurt. Let him go. That's fine. Corey, you got to resign Corey. You made up for it with Julio, so you get a pass. Jack Conklin, we will pay for that Jack Conklin deal for the next 5 years. As long as Jack Conklin is in the league, performing at a high level, that is a pick that we will forever regret because that turned into Isaiah Wilson, and now that's turned into the second-round pick that we drafted this year. And you just don't let all pros go that you draft and develop, man. That's just GM and one-on-one, and that's one that he blew it on.
Yeah, and I really like Jack. I mean, Jack was the offensive line gelled with Jack. I mean, to see him on Cleveland right now and having success, that burns me up every time. But anyways, Isaiah Wilson, we know that story from last year. But again, you got Landry. I don't know without a shadow of doubt, Landry it's going to pan out. Evans, another former first round pick. At this point, I don't see him coming back. If he has a really great year, maybe. I know they didn't pick up the 5th-year option for him. But I just feel like, I already mentioned Beasley. If Julio Jones comes in, and I don't want to say it and be that guy, I pride myself now on being more positive. So Ryan, wherever you are, shout out to you. But if Julio Jones doesn't work out, and let's say the Titans don't win the division, heck, don't even make the playoffs, I think John Robinson's going to feel way more of that pressure than Vrabel is. Vrabel, he kind of did a good job last year from shielding Bowen. I don't really agree with the Bowen thing, but he's going to go with Bowen. But at least they brought in Schwartz to give him a little bit more. And I feel like Vrabel's I think he's done a really, really good job when he focuses on the defense. Last year, he did way too much micromanaging, I think, on the defense. Like I said, sticking up for Bowen and all that other stuff. Man, I know that Vrabel's got to coach the guys, so I completely agree with everyone that says Vrabel, but I just feel like Robinson can't do anything about it at this point. When the season kicks off, I should say. I mean, he can do something at the trade deadline. He can, if someone gets cut along the way and be able to replace them and whatever. But Vrabel will get a chance to kind of fit the masterpiece, mold what he wants for this team. John Robinson's going to sit in the background, and it's got to work out. I mean, you got a lot riding on Christian Fulton. Heck, you drafted Weaver, and then the day after you draft Weaver, he's in the news because he's got a situation going on, right? So I don't know, man. I love John Robinson. I do applaud him for going out and getting himself a Julio Jones. We both agree on like the Conklin thing, and we're not sure if these first rounders are going to work out. We're not sure if Fulton's going to work out. And Farley's another one. I'm excited about Farley, but if Farley flops as well, I mean, I just don't see how they're going to blame Vrabel for that. I think they're going to blame John Robinson.
I agree with you. And one other thing that people, if you don't know, now you know, this is the last guaranteed year for Derrick Henry. His next 2 years are a team option. So
did not know that.
If Derrick Henry, I'm not saying it was going to happen. I'm just letting you know this is the last guaranteed year of his contract. So if he ends up with a 900-yard year, 1,000-yard year, misses 5 or 6 games, God forbid he gets hurt, I'm just saying there may be a decision to be made next March.
Yeah. You know, and I think the whole team's centered around him. You know, if something happened to Derrick, you're not going to be able to get that productivity from Evans. You know what I mean? Who was the guy? And it's like we hardly played him last year, and he did really, really well. He's from Texas.
Deontay Foreman.
I really liked Foreman. I thought he was nothing against McNichols, but I thought Foreman, if comes in on a 3rd and 2, I could see the Titans handing him the ball or throwing it.
Yep,
and I think they did release him, didn't they? He's not on the team anymore.
They did. Yeah. I actually talked to a friend who knows his parents very well. And no, he will not be back in Nashville, which is a disappointment because the guy averaged over 4 yards a carry. Now, he does have an injury history, so I don't know if he got hurt or what happened. I know he was inactive for the last few games of the season. I think he did have an injury near the end of the year. And his career has really been hampered by injuries. And he was a kid that just carried the ball so much at Texas. He was a 2,000-yard runner his last year at Texas, and he just had so many carries on his body that it really hampered him coming into the NFL because he has so much mileage on him. But he's really like a baby Derrick Henry. When you put him into a ball game, I mean, besides the speed aspect, there's not a lot of drop-off when it comes power to power with Derrick Henry and Deontay Foreman.
Yeah. So if Evans, I mean, we can get into all this later. So you got Evans. Who else is on the roster that could give you anything at that position? McNichols still on the roster, right?
Yeah, you got McNichols. You got Darrington Evans. Darrington Evans has to be the guy. I look for Darrington Evans to have a big year. I mean, he has to be the guy. You invested a 3rd-round pick in him. Yep. He was hurt all of last year. And look, his career is on the line. You can't be a 3rd-round pick, miss 90% of your rookie season, and get hurt again your second year. You know, you'll be out of the league in a jiffy. So I expect him to have a big year, and I expect him to get a lot of carries in the early part of the season as well. Try to save Derrick Henry for that second half of the year.
And I know they got him working out at wide receiver and all these other things. I know he's fielding punts or kickoffs or something like that. So they got a lot playing for him, and I agree with you. But I just don't know if anything happened to Henry. I just don't have the faith that they're going to be able to run the same system that they would for him. Defense is number one. Julio Jones helps. Let's be honest with that one, and let's just hope that nothing happens with Derrick. But Ken Moore makes some really good points. You know, I had no idea about Derrick Henry. There were a couple team options for the next couple years. That is interesting. And no one wants to think that. But now you don't have that option right now with Ryan Tannehill. Because if Tannehill doesn't work out, now you're stuck with him. But I think we're all agreeing that was a good thing to restructure his deal so you could have a chance to have Julio Jones. It's pushing the chips in like John Robinson did and giving us an opportunity to just go for the home run instead of messing around with anything else. So shout out again for the Titans. for at least giving us this chance.
On Vrabel, but I can see your position on J-Rob, especially going forward now, because you got that big cap hit with Tannehill for the next 2 years. I think $42 million next year is his cap hit. I think $38 million the following year is his cap hit. So he's really going to have to maneuver that cap in the next couple of years to keep this team afloat. Now, the good thing is that that new TV money is supposed to kick in as well, I think, in the next year or two. So they're hoping that the cap will go up significantly to absorb that huge number from Ryan Tannehill.
So you can follow Ken at Kmore Sports on Twitter. You can follow him on YouTube, Kmore Sports. Again, he has a show called The Day After. He also does some college football content at ESPN, as he broke down today. So Ken does many, many different things. Great guy as well. And like I said, you guys said it best. When we bring Ken in, we get some great, amazing insights and content. So shout out again, Ken, for you taking the time to come on the show tonight. We appreciate it, man.
I appreciate you, buddy. Anytime. Love being here. Thank you guys in the chat. Y'all have a good Sunday night.
Take care, Ken, and we will talk to you soon, buddy. Thanks again.
All right, man. Have a good night.
So, again, that was Ken Moore breaking it down for you. So, shout out to Ken Moore once more. Go over there and subscribe to Ken. Again, great content. The Twitter stuff, you're going to get a lot too, as he will post comments, obviously, and has some really great takes on the Titans. So, again, that's the show for tonight. Shout out to you guys for making this possible, being here to talk Titans. Don't forget to tighten up that like button on your way out. As of right now, we got almost 200 of you in here, 120 likes. So, again, I cannot thank you enough. You guys have made this channel everything it is. Thanks again for the people today that super chatted. I do appreciate it. I'll put them up one more time as we end the show. We started off with Narv Dude, so shout out to him, Alex, and JT Sports. So thanks again for donating to the channel. Like you guys know, for this channel, I reinvest everything into the channel. So shout out again for you. Jay says great conversation. Al says great show. Got to watch some Titans football. Sin City Titans says, Oiler Titan, it's our year. Man, I just hope this whole thing works out and everything's going to blossom before our very eyes. And I can't wait. Somebody said I can't wait for September 12th. I'll do one better than you. I can't wait until August 13th, I believe, is a Saturday, if I'm not mistaken. Or is it even on a Friday? The Tennessee Titans will travel to Atlanta. Now, I know in preseason in week 1, you probably won't see Julio Jones. But thank you, Titan World, for subscribing. But let's be honest, this should be quite interesting to see what happens. And then we also have, just going to Atlanta. I know I'm super pumped because, like I said, Mason Kinsey's only a couple hours, his family from Atlanta. So that's going to be his time to shine. So shout out again to Anthony Ferkser. Had a camp today in Tennessee. I think he had Woodside, he had Kinsey, he had Reynolds there. Saw some photos. I posted them on Twitter. I'm at Titan Upload 27. TNL or capitalized. Also Instagram. I believe it's the same thing without the capitalization. Titan Upload 27. But I got some photos, posted those out there. So definitely go check those out. But it seemed like it was a great thing that they did. Again, for a good cause. So shout out again for those players for giving up their time and helping the young ones out. It's a really cool story. And we'll be covering for Titan Upload Network when they're in Tampa Bay, and they're going to be there. So they're going to give us live footage from that. We're going to work something out. But shout out again to Sin City Titan and Titans Rossi for that. So you guys have a great night. Take care. Don't forget to tighten up. Take care, guys.